May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Real Gaijin, unveiling the real Japan, an American expat's inside look. Now it's time for another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts. Summarized podcast.
All right, good evening from Japan. This is Mark Kennedy, the host of the Real Gaijin Substack and Ask Me Anything podcast series. Tonight in Japan, and a little bit earlier in the day where she is joining us, we are going to be joined by Dr. Izabelle Grenon. She is an intercultural expert, a speaker, and a Japan relocation expert. We're going to get into all sorts of questions that you might have about the challenges, frankly, of moving your whole family to Japan. But it's nothing that we can't overcome. Plus, Izabelle has done this herself, and I have done this many times as well. So we're going to draw on these expert opinions. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started with Izabelle. Please remember this is a live video. So this is your chance to ask anything or make a comment. Just use the chat box functionality at the bottom of your screen to do that, and we will be monitoring as we go. Plus, we will have a recording of this video session that give me about 24 hours to get that done, but I'll have that out tomorrow. So you can go back and listen at your leisure. All right, so without further ado, let me reintroduce Dr. Izabelle Grenon. Izabelle, you're from Canada. You lived in Japan for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your background, please.
Uh, well, I'm from a very small town in Canada called Rimouski.
Okay.
It's in Quebec. I grew up in a very monolingual, multicultural city, and then later on, I moved to Quebec City and Victoria, and yes, I'm from the French part of Canada, so I didn't speak any English before I became an adult. People
Oh
are
my
really
goodness,
surprised
really?
about that.
Wow. So you're trilingual, at least. Or
No, I'm bilingual. It was
well,
hard
but you
enough to
speak.
learn English after that. I
Uh,
tried. I studied Spanish, Danish, Latin, Japanese. But
okay.
unfortunately, I'm not fluent in any language. Yeah,
And
just
where
French.
are you joining us from today?
At Mauritius.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. Well, this is very international today. Terrific. So tell us, you spent quite a bit of time in Japan. Now, what brought you to Japan originally?
Well, I think most people go to Japan because either they're crazy about sushi or
Yeah.
anime or video game. But for me, what brought me is my interest in the Japanese language. So I came
Ah,
in 2008 for my research, for postdoctoral research. I was studying how Japanese perceive English sounds. So I needed to collect data. So I was at Waseda at the time to collect data.
oh,
And then I met somebody and then
okay.
going back and forth. So in 2010, I decided to move to Japan on a postdoc scholarship. And I never expected to stay in Japan. That was never my plan. I did
Wow.
study a bit of Japanese, but I never, that was never my goal to go to Japan. It was never my dream. It was just, I was just going because I was curious. And since was studying the Japanese language for my research, I thought that it was nice to go there and see. Um, but um, but in 2012, I got the position at the University of Tokyo, and it was a permanent position right away. Um,
Oh,
and I didn't expect that. I so we were supposed to move out of Japan, but since I got my position, I did not want to move out of Japan. So it was a good
sure. Sure.
position. I loved it. I had good colleagues, wonderful students. It was a very nice place, and I'm really sad I had to leave everything behind. But as you know, I got some health issues, and it was not possible for me to do that kind of work anymore. So that's why.
So, what exactly was the position at the University of Tokyo?
I was a position of associate professor. So it's permanent. And I belong to two departments. One department was Department of Language and Information Science. That was my main department. It's a graduate
Yeah.
department. But everybody in the department has to belong also to a language department. So for me, I was assigned to the English department. So I had to teach course for both. So it was a lot of teaching, which didn't allow me to do much research, which was really my real passion, is the research. But I love teaching too. It's just it was a little too much. And for me, it was always different course every year, and I had to redesign the course, and it really time consuming. It can take a week to design one class. So I didn't have much time, and of course, I had to supervise students, graduate students, and participate in committee work, organizing program, revising program, hiring committee, so all that kind of thing, and regular meeting, staff meeting that
Mm,
are mandatory. Yeah.
great. And now, did you get started as a relocation consultant in your very little spare time at that point, or what led you to become a relocation consultant?
Hmm. Well, for many years, I wanted to do some community work, and unfortunately, with my family and the job, I really could not find the time to do some community work. And well, as you know, I've been through. Uh, um, I was married to Japanese, two children, and unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Mm,
And I had to go through the court system in Japan,
ooh,
which and relocation for me, like finding a place on my own as a single mom and as a foreigner, which was quite challenging. And um, I thought it shouldn't be that hard to integrate into a culture. And I mean, I had no problem as long as I had a Japanese spouse because he was taking care of
mm,
all the paperwork, all the working through the system. But when you're alone with children in particular, you have to do things for them, register at the school, deal with the school, and the school don't speak English. And unfortunately, as I say, I never had the time or the energy to learn Japanese. So I know quite a bit of Japanese, but not enough, for daily life reading papers and things. So I wanted to do something to help people to have a better life, to not experience what I had to go
mm,
through. And I know many other people who've been through different situations, domestic violence and
mm,
things like that. And I wanted to have some resources, reliable. There's a lot of groups in Japan, but people ask questions, you have all sorts of answers, and you have to go through and decide which one is reliable answer. So
uh, too much.
I wanted to have something. Yeah, and it's all over the place. There's some information, but it's all over the place. So I wanted to put things in one place that is easy to consult. And that's when I decided to start by writing a book. So that book forced me to do a lot of research to make sure that I provide the right information. Of course, it's not legal advice, but you know,
Mm,
and there's lots
mm,
of details, pictures, and then on my website I put some links. It's not exhaustive, but it's a list of reliable resources that people can daily life support and a lot of different things as I've seen on my website. But yeah, so that was my
yeah,
goal,
I'm
and
glad
and
you
this
brought
is
that up. Mm.
yeah.
So, for everybody that's listening, in case you missed this, we put this on the invitation, but also we'll put that in the final write up. There are links to Isabelle's book, which is available wherever books are sold, essentially through Amazon.com and other sources. But that's a great resource. Plus, our website has like extensive resources. And just the other day, I participated in a very interesting webinar that she held about how to go about transporting a pet, dogs and cats specifically, to Japan. I learned a lot. And now I don't have a dog or a cat at the moment, but if I ever do want to bring one from abroad, now I know how to do it. For example, I had never known that dogs and cats don't have actual paper passports, but they get a shot with a chip that goes into their body to act as a passport. That was news to me. But anyway, that's the kind of level of detail that I'm sorry, Isabel has documented in all of these different resources. So please check it out when you have a chance. Now, who are your primary clients when you help people with relocation?
Uh, well, on my website, I got people consulting my website from over 70 different countries. So I
Oh,
can say, yeah, I was really surprised. Um, so it's really all around the world. But of course, people who are already in Japan will be one of the
mm,
main people who check it, and people from English speaking country. Uh, like US, Australia, UK, will be checking my website because it's in English. But I have
So
people from
essentially,
around the world: Iran,
okay. Oh,
Egypt,
wow.
Italy,
Oh,
India. I've people registering to my webinar from different places and checking my
oh,
website from, yeah, around the world, really.
oh, that's right. There was somebody from Vietnam that was asking questions the other day. So are most of the people that you help directly and counsel directly, are these like individuals or are they companies?
Uh, Not companies. I'm not helping companies for sure.
Okay. Oh, you
That's
go
not
right
my
to the
area.
source.
Look, I'm gonna be clear what I can help and what I cannot help. I'm not pretending to be an expert on everything. I'm not. I had questions about immigration and visa, and I said I'm not an immigration lawyer. I cannot give
Sure.
legal advice. I can
Mhm.
give some. I can put them in contact with somebody who is an expert, or give some general advice of maybe what is worth looking at. But I don't want to pretend. Many people, I think some people are, you know, pretend to be an expert because they know a little bit. But in terms of legal information, I cannot
Yeah.
give legal information. But so I don't know if we're going to talk about culture shock, but
Mm.
my support is to ease people entry into Japan by adjusting their expectations, providing advice, and prepare them psychologically and emotionally to the difference. So things are very different, and so when you have a culture shock, usually the first phase is the honeymoon. That's when people are annoyingly amazed by everything.
Yeah. Well, it's
Oh, look
easy to
at
do
that!
that. It's easy to hear.
Look at it.
Yeah.
But so that's the and honeymoon phase, right? You have the honeymoon phase,
What's
and
the
then after
number
that,
one
there's,
thing that they say though? I mean, is it like the safety factor or what jumps out at you most often?
pardon me.
How do people describe the honeymoon phase? What's the thing about being in Japan that surprises them the most, that they really like?
Oh, I don't know. I never, I never asked. I didn't go through I didn't really go through culture shock myself, so I don't know. Um, Yeah, I think I had people coming and like, oh, the trains are so full. There's so many people. They're amazed. Oh, my mother. What she was with the thing that stuck with her is the dessert, how beautiful the desserts are and how presented, and the toilets, how the toilets are so many
Okay, well,
buttons. So
those
that's
are
the
the
two things that
basics.
stuck with
All
her.
right. Okay, well,
But
good.
yeah, same
And
here.
so one of the other I know we have a little bit of an agenda here, but essentially one of the first things I imagine people are concerned about is where are they going to live? But what do you do to help them identify options?
Well, I think the first concern people have is how they can go to Japan, getting a visa. And I don't think many people actually think through about where to live. They think it's going to be simple and the same as other countries, but it's very different. Like, I moved to Mauritius, I found a place. I visit one day, I signed a contract, let me the next day, and then I got the keys, right? But in Japan, as you know,
It's
it's a
fast.
little more complicated. There's a screening process, and you can be rejected for a number of reasons. And also, there's the initial fees, and you need a guarantor. Um, so I think most people don't understand how it works, and also the options. Even I, after many years in Japan, I didn't know all the options and what every option entails. So they have like UR residents. I knew about that. The foreigner friendly agencies, as I like to call it, is the is basically rental that are specifically designed for foreigners, right? So I call them foreigner friendly. But
Yeah.
and there's private rentals, which is the majority of rentals, or private rentals owned by individuals or company, and they're managed by real estate. But each of those rental, or you have to inquire a different place. So some people sometimes will have a real estate agent by the company, provided by the company, and they will give them like three choices, and then they feel pressure to take one of those choices. So what I'm offering is to understand that they have other choices that might be better suited for their family or their condition. Like the foreigner friendly rentals can come fully furnished. Sometimes everything is set up for you, the utilities. And in the private rental, there's much more choices, but you need to know where to look, how to look. And I also know a couple of real estate agents who can help in English and in other languages as well. So I can refer them to the people. But what I provide, I did a webinar on renting in Japan, describing all the options and the fees, so that people can have an overview. But the thing is that you don't know what you need to know, right?
Mm,
And that's my part of my job now, is to raise awareness about these issues. And from a Japanese side too, people don't understand how different things are, or sometimes the advice is a bit maybe condescending, like
mm,
um, like assuming everybody is behaving the same. For example, they will say, "Oh, don't come inside the house with your shoes on," like assuming that everybody in any country of the world come inside the house with their shoes on, which is not true. It's common in Muslim culture to not enter with your
mm,
shoes on. I'm Canadian and I never enter with my shoes on. I always take off my shoes unless, people say don't take off your shoes because the floor is really dirty. But but I don't like it. I like to take off my shoes. For me, it's a reflex. So that was very easy for me to adapt. Yeah. So it takes time and awareness to adapt. Recently, I've been talking with a family who wants to relocate to Japan, and other people want to relocate with their pet or buying a house. And they really have no idea how things work. And they have this idea of what they want, but they don't understand the constraint. So my idea is to adjust, because to prepare them so they're not frustrated that, why is things so different? So to prepare them slowly, psychologically, that things are going to be different and you have to make choices. If you want to be in Tokyo, um, you have to be ready to have more expensive rent, smaller rooms, less sunshine, more
yeah.
noisy maybe. Whereas if you really want to have more peaceful and more space, then you have to be ready to be a little farther away in Japan, in the suburb, or pay
And
higher fees to be in a better neighborhood.
are most of the people that you counsel, they're coming over with family members or at least a spouse?
No, I have somebody who's inquired, who wants to come with her cats and
Oh,
her brother.
okay.
So not
Okay. In that order. All right. Got it. Well, the
so
reason
there's
why I
different.
ask is that if you have children, of course, that opens up a whole new other path that you have to consider in terms of location, size of the residence, and so forth. Uh, like I lived in Tokyo for quite a long time in multiple locations, and I have to have a good balance for everyone. So it's a convenient location for everyone, and also so the commute isn't too much of a burden. I mean, there's no way around it, but I remember commuting between Yokohama and Tokyo through the Tokaido line, which is always one of the busiest. And by the end of that first year there, I just did not want to continue, and we moved. So,
Yeah.
but uh, it's that kind of thing, though, that real estate brokers don't necessarily tell you about, and that's the kind of advice I think you could be providing, I
Yeah.
suppose.
And, that sometimes you have a rental that is maybe just 5 minutes walk from the station, but it's like
Right.
all the
Oh,
way.
yeah, that's
And
another factor.
if you have a
Yeah.
stroller, or, if you have just baby,
Ah,
or you're a wheelchair user, you're not gonna.
yeah,
And maybe there's some buildings, even if they're fourth floor, some buildings don't have elevators, so you need to
yeah,
be aware of that. Carrying a baby with the stroller on one hand and the other hand for fourth floor every day, it's not something
yeah.
that most people are ready to live with. So yeah, you have to know your options, and that's what I'm helping with, to adjust. And the problem, like I had a family contacted me recently, and the um, the question is to have their children in a school,
Mm,
and maybe daycare. And I did the webinar on the daycare system in Japan, so people understand that it's not a first come first serve
right.
system as in some other countries. It's a point system, so you have
Yeah.
to know how it works. Um, and so they want a school that will integrate the children, that will be kind of have maybe some integration program, and that's not super common unless you go into Tokyo itself, right? So that Tokyo have international
Ah,
schools, they will have French schools, they will have different schools, but also they will have a private Japanese school that will have more program for integration, reintegrating returnees in particular, and
oh,
also maybe integrate foreign children. But there
hmm.
aren't many outside Tokyo, or outside maybe in Kyoto, Osaka, they might have some, but so it's really hard to say. And if you go to public school, the issue is that to go to a giving public school, you have to live within the area
Hmm.
that you're allowed to go to that public school. So if you target this school and you live just across the border, you're not allowed to go to that school. Your
Hmm.
children are not allowed to go to that school. So it's really hard. It's really difficult if you have all those, you want to go at this specific school, you want to have this specific home, distance station, and so on. It's a little hard to coordinate. It's a little hard to have everything you want at the same time, basically, right? Unless you have a lot of money, then
Well,
it's
right.
okay.
So that's a good point. I mean, we have two sons, and while living in Tokyo, we went back and forth from America 3 times. But when they were in Japan, we had them go to an international school. But the company I worked for paid for it, so that
Mm.
solved the problem. However, what if you're not in that kind of situation? Do public schools? Let's take the example of an elementary school age child. If there's no language capability in Japanese, let's assume it's Tokyo. Do public Japanese schools even admit foreign children or without any
I believe
language capability?
I I can I, I believe they don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice, meaning that uh, they do
Because if
admit
it's
the
a
student.
public school, they have to admit the children in this area. I don't think they can
Oh,
reject. A private school can reject, but a public school, I don't think. I mean, with reservation,
really?
I don't think they can. I don't think they can reject. And I mean, I've talked to many returnees to Japan, and a lot of children, Japanese children, they go to the US, to UK, and they're put in an English only school with no support whatsoever, and they have to figure it
Mm,
out.
yeah.
Some have support, not everybody don't have support, but from what I heard of experience of Japanese going abroad, sometimes they just put in an English school and just figure it out. So I don't expect Japanese to I expect Japanese school to maybe be, well, just figure it out. You can provide help outside the school. There's, for example, Kumon Center. I lived
Mm,
abroad with my son for half a year, and he was not up to standard with his kanji. So, of course, he spoke Japanese already, but he lost a little bit. So I sent him to Kumon for a few months, and it was really good for him. It was quite cheap and reasonable. I don't know what they can do for speaking, but you have to have some support outside. There's some international office, many international office in Japan. My son got a list of 150, and there's more um, who offers support. For example, because at the school, most teachers, public school teachers, and the staff won't speak any English
yeah.
or the languages. So you have but you need to speak with those people. So a lot of international office, the school can request to the office to get, for example, a volunteer interpreter.
Ah, okay, but with that,
Uh,
like for at the elementary school level, I can imagine not every elementary school in Tokyo would be able to have that kind of resource. Are children that need special language teaching or augmented learning, do they get sent to another school or is a special teacher dispatched to their own elementary school?
uh, I mean, it might depend on the school, but as far as I know, I don't think there's uh, any help. For public school, is limited, right? They're already working like 8 to 8 or 7 to 7 every day. And on the weekend, I see them at the school. They're like, it's 7 p.m. and everybody's still in the office. So they're working really hard, and I know and they don't have time to adapt. They have the school, in the school there's easily 35 students in elementary school, which is a
In
lot.
one class, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in one class. And sometimes can go to 40. So you can imagine that public school are not equipped to help. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just happy if the kids don't get bullied. That's my my criteria. My kid
Right.
was bullied in the first grade in primary school, even though he was Japanese and spoke Japanese. He was bullied by 5 boys at some point. He got beaten up, um, and the school would not really do anything about it. So it was every day. So
Mm.
we changed school. I moved to a different area, and it was a different school. And the other school
Okay.
was much more welcoming, much more, the ambience was much nicer, and there was no bullying as far as I know in that school. So, it's a hit or miss with schools like anywhere else, I guess. Um,
So, for example, though, now most of the foreigners that are coming into Japan now are not English speakers. So, in that particular case, if let's say it's a family from Indonesia, uh, how does the school? I mean, what if they cannot afford, let's say, to send their child to a school where they speak Indonesian? And they want to send their child to a regular public school in Japan. It's just like a sink or swim. The poor kid is put into the classroom and expected to absorb Japanese. Or how is
Pretty
yeah?
much, pretty much.
Oh,
Unfortunately, there's no, I don't think. But if your family from Indonesia or, Vietnam or these kind of countries, in my experience talking with people from those countries, what they want a better future for their family. So they want their kids to master Japanese and become as Japanese as they can.
mm,
So I think for them, they would want the kids to go to, you know, public school, unless, they can afford international school or a
mhm.
private school. But yeah, it's kind of it's a little sad, but it's it's how do you say? Um, yeah, you have to uh, yeah. So
Yeah, well, I can
that's
imagine that that would be very challenging. Okay,
for sure.
and so um, I tell you what, maybe we could talk a little bit more about that. But I know, as you pointed out, you don't cover the legal aspects of relocation to Japan, but you cover a lot of the soft aspects that aren't necessarily well, they're in your guidebook, but they're not necessarily written down anywhere. And you need to talk to somebody that's been there, done that, like you, in order to get the frontline message. Back on other issues that come up, what other kinds of support do you provide as a service other than the housing and consultation about schools?
Uh, well, with consultation about the school is not my expertise, but the relocation process, for example, like in my book, there's some advice about what to bring, what not to bring. So that's a big question. People say, well,
Ah,
what should I bring? Right? Should I bring all my furniture, all the electronics, or should I buy everything new? How much would it cost?
ah,
How to reduce the cost? What about my car? So
mm,
there's different questions like this. So in my book, I explain the difference in voltage and how it might affect your electronics. I move printer, laser printer to Mauritius, and in Japan it's 100 volt, and here it's 220 volt. Never made it work. I talked with an expert
that
in
kind of stuff.
printing
Okay.
planet, and he said, no, there's nothing we can do. So it doesn't work because laser, apparently, what I read, is very, very sensitive to the exact voltage and even with a transformer. So you have a transformer, of course, and then the adapter for the plug, but it couldn't work. So there's some things that are not worth bringing, I found out, and I read more about it to give proper advice to people. So that's one thing. Importing your pets as well, the timeline, and I mean it's all written on the website, the Japanese website, but if you've navigated a few Japanese websites, they're kind of not intuitive from a Western point of view. I don't know if they're intuitive from a Japanese, because we don't read, for example, figure in the same way. In Western country like English, we tend to read a figure from top left to bottom right. So that's how we read things. But in Japanese, there's some research on that. The Japanese will tend to read a figure from right to left. So it's a very different way of reading figures.
Sure,
You can
sure.
get different results.
Okay, well, I tell
Before
you
and
what,
after is
mhm, got it. Just a quick reminder to the people that we have listening live. This is an Ask Me Anything session. So, or it doesn't have to be a question. It could be just a comment about your own relocation experience. Maybe you had a positive experience. Hopefully you did. Otherwise, if you had a particular issue, we'd love to hear about it. Please just put a brief message in the chat. And also, by the way, we don't need to read your name. You can quote unquote ask for a friend if you're interested to do it that way too. No problem. When you touched on this before about communication challenges and so forth and adapting to Japan. Now you were able to survive quite well and successfully without necessarily speaking fluent Japanese. But what kind of advice can you give to somebody who's looking to find a job without necessarily fluent Japanese or just getting along? What's your opinion about that?
I mean, you can move in Japan and not speak fluent Japanese. Of course, there's a lot of apps and a lot of um, translation tools, and that's what I use most of the time. I got like, I don't know, a zillion emails for my work in Japanese every day, so I had to figure it out. And all the paperwork from the school, at least when I left 2 years ago, it was all still paperwork, and I had to scan to get the translation. Sometimes pile of paper, and they love the paperwork in Japan. And there's lots of information. They like to give you all the information, but it's hard to figure out if it's all in Japanese. So um, I mean, the question I think is, can you find a job if you don't speak Japanese? Maybe that's a more specific question. And
Sure.
it depends, of course, it depends what you're looking for. It depends your skills. It depends of the job. If you're a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer, obviously you need to pass an exam in Japanese to be able to practice in Japan. So you need to be fluent. So some jobs, but you could, for example, you could do nurse consultation, phone consultation for foreigners in Japan, which is just consultation. I think legally you could do that. We'll have to check on that. But things like that. So I met a doctor who were not allowed to practice in Japan, but he was doing like psychological consultation instead, which he was allowed to do because in Japan, psychologists are not registered. You don't have a registration of psychologists, so anybody can be a psychologist in Japan. Well, a therapist. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can be a therapist, maybe not psychologist, but yeah. So it depends on the jobs. It depends what you're looking for. If you're not if you're not highly skilled, then it's become a little more difficult. There's construction you can do. I know some company, Turkish company. So if you speak Turkish, it could be good too. And there are a lot of companies who are foreign companies, like there's French schools, there's German companies, there's American companies. So there's many different options depending on your career choice and what you can do, right? But it's a myth that
Okay.
if you don't speak Japanese, you cannot get any job. That's what I was told, actually. When I was, I have a PhD, and I was asking a lady who has been in Japan for a long time. They said, "Oh, do you think I can find a job in Japan?" I said, "You speak Japanese?" No. I said, "What, you think you're going to give you a job because you don't speak Japanese? What do you think?" And I went to Japan. I got a job at the University of Tokyo. So you never know, right? But I had the qualification, I had the experience, and I was uh, the specialty that we're looking for at that time. So I was a bit lucky in that sense, at the right place at the right time, but with the right dossier.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. And as you know, on this podcast, we've interviewed quite a number of other foreigners that live and work in Japan, and pretty much all of them I recommend learning Japanese to the greatest extent possible in order to get along and not only to find a job. But okay. Well, but you figured out a way to do it without being fluent, which is great. Good. So, what about other things with regards to daily life in Japan uh, that you counsel your clients about, like the cost of living? I mentioned, of course, it's all relative to where they're coming from, but gender inequality, you mentioned that before, salaries, discrimination. What kind of things have you counseled your clients about?
Uh, I haven't done any counsel on gender equality, but I can tell you about this if you want. Uh,
Sure.
so gender equality is an issue in Japan, and there's many issues in Japan I can talk to you about if you want. Gender equality is very uh well, it's not equal. Japan is not a very equal in terms of gender.
Mm,
And the way how is that impact people directly? For example, when I wanted to get a mortgage for building a house with my partner, I was denied mortgage first because I was a foreigner and I didn't have PR. Then I got PR. Then I was denied because I was pregnant. Then I was denied because I was on maternity leave. So they say they don't give mortgage to pregnant women or women maternity leave. And the reason that this happens is because of maternity harassment. So a lot of women, after they take maternity leave, and I know many people who lost their job after taking maternity leave or paternity leave, um, they just lose their job, and the bank cannot take the chance that they won't get the job back. So that's why a lot of women,
What?
even though you have a 1 year maternity leave you can take in Japan, a lot of women will take like the minimum, like 2 months. It's actually 2 months of maternity leave and the rest is parental leave. And many Japanese will take the minimum because they're so afraid of losing their position, be switched to a different department, or completely lose their job. And that happens a lot. I think
Mm,
25% of women 26% of women in a regular job have reported suffering from maternity harassment, and about almost 50% of temp worker
mm,
uh, um, have been suffer from harassment. The thing is that in Japan, it's all about the corporation, right? So they think that the society will work well if the corporation work well, and it worked for a while. But now it doesn't work anymore. But still, the law is there to protect corporation, uh, with the idea that corporation are sustaining the society. So the laws are really there to protect. For example, if you've been victim of harassment by a company and you talk publicly about it, you face having charges against you for tarnishing the image of the company, even if the accusations are true. Um,
mm.
so there's many little things like this. Discrimination is the same. There's discrimination like in any other country. That's okay. We know that. But in Japan, there's no system in place to protect or to punish or to have any consequence if you do discrimination. So a landlord will reject you because you're a foreigner. There's nothing you really can do. There's nothing in the system, even with domestic violence. I've talked to many women victim of domestic violence and some expert in that area. And the problem is that the system is made for making the victim disappear,
Oh,
like
no.
out of sight, out of mind. There,
Mm.
I've yet to hear a case of DV that might happen, but it's very rare that a person was arrested, going to prison, or even pay a fine for it. Usually, it's domestic violence is just you disappear. If you're a victim, you just go away.
So,
So the system
what?
is not meant to protect. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what advice do you give somebody that has come to you who's a victim of domestic violence? What kind of advice do you give them in order to not disappear, but to make the problem disappear?
Well, you have to work with the system. I've been through the system. It's very frustrating, and that's I say I never had a culture shock when I moved to Japan, but I got the culture shock when I through the divorce system. It was like, why are things like this? And it doesn't make any sense to me. But I mean, I understand now how the system works. but it's not meant to protect people. Um,
Mhm.
and I cannot really, I mean, every case is unique. I cannot give advice of what to do. I'm not a legal expert, but I can refer people to people who can help
Mm.
and support. There are there actually are quite a few daily support services on my website. People can contact. Some are free, some are governmental
Mhm.
support. There's some
Okay.
complaint services if you think your human rights are, but nothing's going to happen. That's the problem, right? You can complain, you can mention, and you can report it, but what's going to happen? Usually, nothing really happens. So that's the
Mhm.
problem.
Okay. So we have a question from one of the listeners today. It has to do with how about relocation for LGBTQ couples who may have been married abroad? Ah, so is there? I assume the question is: is the marriage recognized here in Japan? And
No.
how does this?
Uh,
No. Okay. So how does that affect their ability to like find housing and get relocated? Essentially, or is there any effect?
yeah, so I mean, there are some cities that started to recognize you can register your partnership, and at the city level, you might have the same rights, right? Because if you're not married, and for example, your partner is in a life-threatening condition at the hospital, only the spouse will have control of making decision on their behalf. And if you're not considered married, then you cannot maybe even see your partner. So it's a very difficult thing, and also for inheritance. So if you, for example, you own a house and it's on the name of your partner and the partner is deceased, you don't get the house, right? Unless it's anyway, you have to prepare for that in a different way. Um, but I believe for visa purposes, because visa
Mm.
is a national agency, then the marriage won't be recognized at that level. It's not recognized at the national level, but it can be recognized at the local level. So basically, if you're married with a person and you're same-sex marriage, then you need both to have your separate visa to come to Japan. But you have to understand that depending on where you live, you might not have the same rights as married couples. For example, the right to adopt. Usually, you don't have to adopt. You don't have the right to artificial insemination. Although I hear some case they might, some doctors might agree somehow, but when you go, you're pregnant. One of the first things they ask you is your marital status. Uh, so you have to be aware that, yeah, things are
Oh,
developing. There,
okay.
this the normal the general population views on LGBTQ is quite open and quite accepting. However, the laws are not. Right.
So how would that legal status, affect your ability to do the basics of relocations, like find housing and get situated?
I'm not sure, but I mean, you can, when you rent an apartment, you have to disclose who's going to live with you.
Hmm.
So you just disclose your partner. That's it. Uh, I don't know what else you
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
know.
All right. Okay. Well, I tell you what, for the person that asked that question, uh, let us know if we answered it adequately. If not, if you'd like to clarification on that, please put another question in the chat. And for everybody else who's listening, please put more questions in the chat. We'd love to get to them. Okay. Um, I suppose
By the
another
way,
big thing. Yep.
yeah. So my specialty is more in intercultural relations. So just want to mention, and of course I offer practical advice, but uh, yeah, my specialty is really helping with the adaptation and integration and expectations. And I think people don't realize sometimes how important this adaptation is. For example, if you go working for a Japanese company, you have your own expectation and how to manage, for example, a Japanese team. It will be very different approach. So
Mm.
that's one of the service. I'm starting with some events I'm going to plan soon to help with this kind of adjustment in leadership style. So this is what my direction I'm doing. What I do to
Okay.
help people, as you know, I do that mostly as a volunteer basis because
Mhm.
the workshops are free. The resource on my website is free. I charge very little fee for consultation, but I do a discovery call for free. So this is not, my main job. So the main job is more like public speaking to try to raise awareness about cross-cultural differences, but also understand, have some empathy. I did a course in the University of Tokyo. Sorry, Is it okay if I?
Sure.
Okay. So I did a course for the English department. I never really taught English, but I taught in English. The students didn't know the English, they know the vocabulary, but one of the class I did that was most popular with students was about immigration.
Hmm.
And I found out that many of the students, when you ask them what do you think about immigration in Japan, it's very stereotyped, right? So they see, oh, we need immigration because uh, the birth rate is not high enough in Japan and we have a labor shortage, the basic stuff. And when you ask them what are the disadvantage, they will say, well, it's going to increase the crime rate.
Uh,
So basically, about 90% or 99% of my students, that's what the answer was. And whether or not they were for or against immigration in Japan it varied. But it was always those positive and negative was pretty much always the same. And so during the class, I had expert coming, so an expert in crime rate to discuss and answer the student question: is it true? Will immigration increase the crime rate? And his answer was, well, not necessarily, and actually, in some cases, it's the opposite because immigrants are more have a higher risk if they commit a crime. If a Japanese national steal a onigiri, well, maybe you're going to go to prison for a day or two, but then it will be fine. This will finish. But a foreigner, there was this case of a foreigner who stole onigiri, or maybe on purpose or not. I don't know. Sometimes you take something and you don't have enough hand, you put it in your bag, and then you get out and say, "Oh, I didn't pay for that article." I don't know what it was, the circumstance, but basically, he was accused of stealing onigiri, this one rice ball, like 100 yen, and he went to prison for a year, and he was deported. So the consequence for an immigrant of committing a crime or higher. And there's another also important demographic is that people are more likely to commit crime are usually young men.
hmm.
And as the immigration populations are mostly targeting young men to come for construction workers, farming, and things like that, then of course they're more prone just because of their age and their demographic. But if you consider and also the poverty rate also can increase the risk of crime. But if you put things equal, you factor out the level of income and the age difference and the gender, then you realize that the immigrants actually don't commit more crime than Japanese. And actually, the crime rate has decreased over the past like 10 or 12 years, while immigration has been going up. So uh, that's a stereotype. And but it was nice because we did discussion about that, about xenophobia. I interviewed some immigrants in Japan, and there was this man from Africa. He's a black man from Africa, and he was discussing how he was a little disappointed or upset that nobody sat beside him in the train.
Uh,
And
yes.
the little things. But the students, what that was nice is that the
Sure.
students gain a more thorough perspective, and they were like one of the students um, wrote in the final essay that we should not accept more immigrant in Japan, and his reason or her reason, I don't remember, was that because Japan is not prepared to welcome them properly.
Okay. Well, the country might never be prepared if that's the case, though. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that was nice because he said they didn't realize that how challenging some of the things could be for foreigners in Japan.
Mhm. I see. Okay. Well, so how do you counsel, for example, if you had a group of young men that are coming from abroad to work in the construction industry in Japan, what kind of advice do you give them to make sure that they stay out of trouble, essentially?
What can I do? I mean, is there, uh, I mean, I'm not going to say, hey, you cannot get into a fight, you cannot commit a crime. I think it's obvious.
Hmm.
It's not because
Yeah.
you're a foreigner that, hey, I can commit a crime in Japan. I can do whatever. No, I mean, people have a sense of what right and wrong in
Okay.
every cultures, in every religion. Stealing is not okay, murder is not okay, fighting is not
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
mm,
yeah.
maybe that's a little obvious, but maybe flipping the question around a little bit. How about advice on the positive side? So, what can you do proactively in order to integrate more effectively into Japan?
Hmm. Well, I think to integrate, you can adapt. You can So there's a different aspect maybe I can try to disentangle. Okay, so you can adapt. So there's the culture shock. So you have the honeymoon phase. You have after that. So people mostly go through those phases when they come to Japan. Honeymoon phase, really excited, happy to be here. Everything is so nice. And then at some point you realize things are different than where you're coming from. So you start comparing. In my country, we do this way. In my country, we do that way. That's the annoying
Mm,
phase that people are comparing their country all the time. But
right.
it's usually a phase. And then you adapt to the Japanese norm, or you adapt, for example, your home to a way that is okay with you. So you adapt things. You don't like the crowded trains. For me, I didn't like the crowded trains. So I will come back home during outside the traffic hours.
Mm,
So that's how I adapt
sure.
to make sure that it was okay with me and I could cope with that. And then, so that's the adaptation phase, but you have to have like the accepting phase that things are different. And that's when is more like the integration. And integration is both sides. So you integrate, but people around you have to integrate. So if you're working for a Japanese company, they have to integrate you and not put you aside and treat you like you're just a number or you're just convenient. So you have to feel like you're a person and you're part of the team. And then you
So,
have yeah.
maybe a question about that. I mean, there's an ongoing debate in Japan that you're probably very familiar with, which concerning immigration, which is
Mhm.
essentially a taboo word to a certain extent here. Foreign residents are typically still viewed as temporary labor by and large. Now, it depends on the background of each person, but immigration, and it's certainly being highlighted in the current election underway. Uh, it's generally not encouraged, and how do you explain that to your clients, for example, or at least to people that are seeking your counsel? I mean, is it seems like the expectation is for many foreigners, including people that are working in the construction business, for example, as laborers, they do have an interest in staying long term in Japan and potentially staying forever. But it seems like
Yes.
Japan's not ready to welcome them.
Yeah, well, there was some problems with the intern trainee program. As you know, it's been
Mm,
dismantled because there was a lot of abuse. Employers, they will confiscate the passport, even, it was not.
yeah.
But yeah, Japan tend to view foreigners as a temporary solution to a problem. So they say, okay, we have a labor shortage, so we let them come here, we teach them, and then we send them back to their country. So there's many, but what people fail to understand is that to get that visa to get in, they have to pass a Japanese exam, the N4. They have to achieve an N4 on the Japanese exam, which I calculated just the number of kanji people need to master. This is for primary school students. It's 4 years of learning kanji. And this is a kid who already speak the language and already know the words. So a foreigner can spend like 4 or 6 years to learn the same kanji. Well, maybe they're working full time at the same time. So it's a lot of commitment and a lot of work. If you do that and you come to Japan, your family is not allowed to follow you. Why would you do that? I mean, it would be easier to go to Canada or the UK and have a better hope for the future for your family. So, and if you say, well, you do it for the salary, well, again, the salary in other countries like the US and Canada will be usually much higher than in Japan. Um, s- so it's
Well,
good that
except
more people
those
are
countries aren't open though anymore. So, uh,
yeah, there's that. But I mean, you have other countries that you can go to. If you're a young person who's capable, there's jobs almost everywhere, especially in farming, in construction, in restoration, hotels, many places like this, cleaning, nurse, or support staff for elderly home, for example. It's not technically a nurse. You can have this. They need that in Japan and in Canada. They need that in Australia. They need that. And these kind of workers are welcome in other countries. So if Japan wants to attract the best, um, it's really hard. They want to improve people's ability to speak in Japanese. And the rationale is that not many people speak Japanese in Japan. And they want to make it stricter, the regulation, because they want to appease people's fear that fear of immigration. And but there's two ways of appeasing the fear is that you do what if you feel that there's too many immigrants, you just uh, you welcome less immigrant. But there's another there's another way to appease the fear is education, educating people about what immigrants are here for, their ambitions, um, what is their background, and what is the reality about immigration? Or does it really increase crime rate? Do they really take advantage of the system? Maybe a minority, but the minority of Japanese to take advantage of this system. So there's it's on both sides, right? So education could help, and that makes me I feel sad to see that the government is taking the stance of instead trying to make it more difficult. Now that finally some people are actually coming to Japan to work,
yeah,
hopefully they're gonna make some. So integration takes both sides. You cannot expect immigrants to just adapt and become Japanese. You cannot become Japanese. You're gonna lose your sense of identity. But the education goes both sides. So you have to have the understanding on the other side too, of where people are coming from and what they want, and be accepting. I had someone who
how
wrote
do
on my. I
how do
had
you
someone
see
who
this
wrote on my.
playing out? So, that, so for example, this is literally a very hot topic in the election that's underway right now. It seems to me that for a lot of business owners in Japan that rely on foreigners as a source of labor, they absolutely wouldn't be in business without their foreign workers. And they're very grateful. And also, I think there's a lot of understanding about just how hard people that come from abroad work when they're in Japan, and a lot of appreciation for that. At the same time, Japanese people that might not be directly exposed to foreigners, particularly foreigners working in as a source of labor like that, have a viewpoint that might be not accurate, like you just outlined about the source of crime, which has been proven to be incorrect. How do you see this playing out? Because the country, I don't think, can maintain current the status quo of just running as a country, without some help from foreign immigration. But at the same time, it seems like politicians in particular are gung ho about not supporting more immigration and making it more difficult, as you say. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I'm not an expert in politics, but what I see is that there's a problem in the companies itself. The companies and the general mentality that you come in Japan, you have to behave like Japanese people and follow all the Japanese rules. And if you're a business owner, for example, who employed people from abroad, so there's companies that hire not just people in constructions or farm, there's a lot of software engineers that are hired, for example, for different companies. These people, and I met many of those, would come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, um, Middle East, these kind of countries. And they will try to lead those people the same way that they lead Japanese people. And they will manage the teams the same way as they manage the Japanese team. The problem is they don't understand. They expect people to just become knowledgeable at how the Japanese system works. The problem with that is they come from very different leadership style. So Japanese leadership style is very hierarchical, but also you work on a project. The project is you have all the tasks, the timeline, and you follow the plan, right? In India, typically, working on a project is more fluid, more flexible. So you have a plan, but the task you may decide them as you go or adjust them, and the timeline is much more fluid and flexible. And if you're used to work that way, it might not make sense to you to work the way the Japanese do. You might not think it's efficient, and you might feel reluctant to work that way or not able to use that way. So it needs understanding on both sides to say, okay, you're used that way, you need to understand. But if leaders don't even know the difference, how can they explain to the employees their expectations in a way they will understand? Right?
Mhm.
I work with people from different cultures, and I could see, there's the way they approach. Some people, for example, ask me if they can call me by my first name, whereas some people call me like sensei or Grenon sensei.
Sure,
And
sure.
and for me, it doesn't matter. I don't request people to
Mm.
call me a certain. This is just about name. But yeah, if you want to integrate people and have workers to be efficient, to stay, and to be productive, both in quantity and quality, you have to be able to work together. And to work efficiently together, you need to understand each other, basically. Right.
So, part of the ongoing dialogue among all the politicians that are running for office now is a desire to have some sort of a official program for teaching Japanese culture to foreigners that are here. And how do you think that that is going to be designed and implemented?
Well, I think it's going to be, if it's anything like the pamphlet from the government, it's very prescriptive in nature to tell people this is how you're supposed to do. This is the Japanese way. Uh, you don't want to offend Japanese people, so please do the Japanese way. It's not very conscious about other culture, and it's not necessarily in a bad way. It's just the way they will teach Japanese children. It's the way that Japanese children are taught in Japan too.
Oh, I can't hear you. No, can't hear you.
Okay, okay, so you can
Oh,
hear me.
there you are. Okay. Well, I tell you what, if we're having technical difficulties, yeah, I just noticed it's already an hour has passed. This went very quickly. Um, one more shout out to the people that are listening in. If you have any comments or questions, please use the chat and we'll try to address that. But otherwise, Isabel, thank you very much. You've shed a lot of light on many issues, including relocation to Japan, some of the challenges there, specifically issues related to women who have faced some discrimination issues when they arrive here in Japan or are working here in Japan, plus the whole issue about integration and immigration and cross-cultural communications. That's a deep subject. So thank you very much. Well, if we don't have any more questions, maybe I'll pass it back to you if you'd like to say a final note. And also tell us how we'll put the information into the final write up here, but how can we get in touch with you and find oh, situations online? Well, hold on. Before we say goodbye, we have a detailed question here. Okay, let me read it. I have lived in Japan a long time, 15 years in Tokyo and the last 3 in Yamanashi. My hometown is Minneapolis. Ooh, and watching what's happening there is now very unsettling, if I can imagine. I'm relieved to see the Japanese government taking immigration more seriously and making what looks like it might still be processing. That's as far as we got here. Well, in any case, it sounds like this is going to be a hot topic for quite a while to come to figure for the Japanese government to figure out at different levels how to better integrate people like us and people from all over the world that are coming to Japan to live and work. Well, I'll tell you what, maybe we'll get more of this question in just a second, but otherwise, if you want to just say a few words about how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I mean, you can check my website, isabellegrenon.com with the Z. So there's a lot of information there. Um, and if you're interested I mean, I think if people start a business in Japan or they go to work for a Japanese company as a manager, I'm really excited that I'm going to offer some event, um, special type of event for leaders, global leaders around the world to connect together and learn about cross-cultural leadership across cultures and try to refine their their leadership skills to be able to lead multicultural teams and teams across borders. So I'm going to have more information about this soon. I will post some on my website, or if you're interested to learn more about it, curious, you can send me an email as well. I can put you on the mailing list so you're the first on to know when the registration is open and take advantage of the early bird registration.
Okay, very
So is
good.
there a question to finish?
Yeah. So, yeah, okay, I'll keep reading. So, this person is very glad to see that the Japanese government is taking immigration more seriously and making it more difficult. Oh, given what's happened globally and how the United States and parts of Europe are now struggling to reverse earlier decisions regarding immigration, it's understandable, even necessary, that Japan takes its time and has this debate. Ah, Oh, here we go on. Preparing a workable system for immigrants and ensuring society itself is ready shouldn't be rushed. Ah, so take your time. Yeah, it seems like the process is being rushed a bit at the moment, at least to clamp down on immigration. But do you have a comment about that?
I don't disagree with some of the measures in place. Like, I do feel it was a little odd that, for example, obtaining citizenship was easier,
Mm,
was easier than permanent residency.
yeah.
So I think that I mean, there's some changes that I totally agree with. Um, they raised the fee for renewing the visa to like 8,000 to 40,000, and they compare to the countries. The difference is that the Japanese visa tend to be short.
Mm,
Some visas are just for 6 months or 4 months even.
yeah.
If you have to renew at 40,000 yen every time, that's very expensive. If you have a 5-year visa, it's 40,000 yen. Sure, it's reasonable. But so I think this is not an advantage because people who have shorter visa are typically in jobs that, manual jobs, whereas those who have 5-year visa are people in management job or academic job. So I think that it will create more difference between the rich and the poor, maybe in some ways. Um,
Mm,
between the rich and the poor immigrant. So I agree with some of the measures. I disagree with others. And I think that the problem is the focus is to, yeah, as I said before, the focus is really into calming the fear of Japanese people and please Japanese people. But, instead of educating on both sides. So there's a lot of effort that should be, and they say, well, in other countries, there's been some disaster. And part of disaster, it seems, is the problem with integration. And
mm,
integration is really to make people feel like they belong. And this is not happening in Japan either. So I met the lady recently, very interesting lady. She's studying why she's been studying why people, for example, in Europe, will join like extremist movement. like terrorist movement. And what seems to be the reason is not because they don't have a job. It's not because of a job. It's not because of what we will assume. It's because they're frustrated about feeling always like an outsider, that never be feeling integrated. So maybe this is what we should focus on. And this will make everybody happy. Because if Japanese feel more comfortable because they understand where people come from and they realize that we're not so different. We have the same desire, the same values. And also there's the myth of difference, that people from different cultures live differently. There's different cultural differences, for example, in leadership style. But in terms of lifestyle, the lifestyle is not affected by people in China don't live differently in Japan. What makes a difference is their level of income. People of the same income level, it doesn't matter where they live on the planet. They have the same bed, the same kind of kitchen, the same kind of bathroom. But as you go down the scale, of course, also people from around the world, it doesn't matter where you live. So this is the myth of the fact that people have different lifestyle, they live differently. If you're just from a different cultural country. So at least this is something that, you can show that people don't live differently. They have same kind of lifestyle, no matter where they come from, but they need the same income level. Right?
Okay, well, that sounds good. Let's leave it at that since we're a little over on our time. But thank you, and thank you very much for the couple of questions that we received, including this detailed question. Yeah, this is a touchy subject, immigration, and it's something that the Japanese government and Japanese people are dealing with right now, and it's a hot topic for the election that's currently underway. In any case, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about that in the future. And one last thing, we got more comments from another listener. Agree, immigration has been the elephant in the room for too long, and now it is out in the open. It will be uncomfortable for a lot of Japanese people, but hopefully it goes in the right direction by learning from other countries, for example, Australia. All right. That's right. There's a lot to learn from other countries. Izabelle, I don't need to keep you any longer, but thank you very much for the comments and counsel, and everyone that's joined. Thank you very much for joining us today. As promised, we will get a final version of the recording out within 24 hours, and also a couple of highlights and also links to Izabelle's website and other resources, including her book. I'll put that out in the final report. So thank you again for your participation, and have a good evening, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. And very nice talking with you, Mark. Thanks.
お疲れ様でした。
Thanks for watching and or listening to another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts on Real Gaijin. Tell us what you think and be sure to tune in again next time.